You're listening to CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications and Power Platform podcast. I'm Joel Lindstrom, joined today by George Doubinski. George, how you been doing?
Reasonably well. It's midday here. It's evening at your place, I believe.
Yep.
And we both wear baseball commentators' headsets.
Yeah, a lot has changed in the about 6 months we've done this. One of the reasons why I haven't been able to podcast much in the last few months is because I moved and I got a new dog. And what else happened? Just a lot of changes happened since then. So
you probably got 3 new MVPs on your team.
I think we got more than that. Yeah. So no, and actually I have a new official title. I'm now the Senior Director of Power Platform for Hitachi Solutions North America. So it's been exciting. We've been building a team of Power Platform people, and it's been really, really cool to take people who were kind of like either work for an internal company or were kind of hobbyists in the Power Platform, and to see them do it in their day job, it's really inspirational to me. And
is it different from you used to hire for Dynamics projects, right?
Yeah.
So Dynamics 365 projects. Is it different hiring people for Power Platform projects?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit of what I see the differences, because I was a Dynamics architect for years, and I still like Dynamics, but there's just key differences that I see both in the people, and when I say power platform, I mean specifically people who are either next level good with Canvas apps specifically, although they do model driven as well, but also people who are next level good with Flow and especially RPA. They think a little bit different is what I see. Especially here's what I've really come to respect: the people who have grown up with Power Platform but been limited to the standard connectors like SQL Server, like SharePoint, and that's all they had. They have a little bit more of a scrappiness about them than those of us who have always had the good stuff, because they've had to work around the limitations. And then I find that they can learn Dataverse really fast. I find somebody it's easier for them to learn Dataverse and model-driven apps than somebody who coming from the Dynamics background who's been comfortable doing that and then do that. I mean, there's a lot of similarities too. Part of the difference though is Dynamics projects have traditionally had this kind of mystique about them where, you can't do that. You don't know what you're doing. You need a partner to do it all, where Microsoft has marketed Power Platform as a citizen developer tool. And so I see a lot more active customers, meaning they want to do part of the build and they want to do that. So that kind of changes the project structure. It kind of changes kind of how the team is, because the reality is, a lot of our customers have people who are pretty good with it. And so that forces, to be successful, especially doing Canvas apps, is a partner. You have to be better than the people you're doing them for, because if you're just doing it and they're as good as you are, why are they paying you to do it, right?
Well, that's kind of what was my next question. Wasn't Dynamics 365 giving you some kind of job security, and Power Platform kind of take it away and forces you to continuously do something new that cannot be done by people on the ground, so to speak? But by the same token, you want to create something that could be easily understood and maintained by those people, right? So
right.
Where I find a lot of burn is maintenance, and I want to remove myself from doing that by educating and handing it over to the people on the ground. But at the same time, I don't want them to know everything. So I guess it's
right.
I want to maintain this mystique about what we do.
Yeah, and I think, there's always going to be things that are, unless you do this as your full-time job, you're not going to know or be as fast at doing it. But I think it's healthy that they're waking up to the fact that they can do it. And again, we found, multiple customers that we can upskill them on how to do it, and there's things they can do, and they can even start building certain types of apps themselves. But then, we're there to do the more advanced stuff, or projects that are just around governance, like how should I set up my environments, how should I set up my data rules, and all that fun stuff. But I think it's just it is a realization that the cheese has moved, and a lot of Dynamics people haven't woken up to that. And I think the rude awakening that's coming is the consolidated maker environments with the canvas pages and the merging of those controls, and Power Effects eating the world and coming into model driven apps and all that, which is going to force them to have to upskill on how do you write formulas, that they've been ignoring.
Well, but have you been working a lot with Dataverse for Teams?
Oh yeah, that's been
lately?
my other main focus.
Oh, so it's different. So why do you think that Dataverse for Teams is different from Power Platform projects in general? Isn't Dataverse for Teams kind of a move away from Dynamics 365 in the same way as Power Platform is, to move a sidestep in Dynamics 365 as such? So what I'm trying to get the answer for is, I'm trying to understand for my customers. And look, let's be honest, my customer base is different from your customer base, right? So when you go to a customer, you can reasonably expect there will be IT, there will be some internal team, there will be some governance. When I walk into small to medium business, there's a business owner who says like, okay, George, how are you going to burn my money? Do tell. So it's slightly different take on slightly different expectations. Right, but to me, I'm still trying to get my head around what does Dataverse for Team means, let's say, for small to medium business development, right? And to me, the question is fundamentally, is it a learning tool? Is it a step up to the full Dataverse? Is it a tricycle before you get on proper two-wheel bike? Or is it a kind of different mode of transportation altogether? It's like a moped versus Kawasaki motorbike. I'm saying I never jump in on Kawasaki because all I need to do is to commute 15 minutes in a low traffic, no highways, just to my place of work and back. A moped works just fine for me, So what is it for you? Is it a learning tool? Is it step up? Or is it environment in its own rights?
I think every Power Platform customer can have a place for Dataverse for Teams. And let's use the example of tools. So in my garage, I have a large drill that when I need to drill into rock or something like that, I will use. But then
Do you often need to drill into a rock?
I got brick on my house or whatever. If I don't know, I might. But then I've got a small battery operated drill for when I want to hang up a small picture. And it's like I don't always use the big power tool for every case. And what it acknowledges is Power Platform is designed to be usable in multiple scenarios. So you have small use cases. For example, we built an approval app for a large company, but the way that it was working, it's going to be a small number of approvals. It basically replaces the Teams. There's an approval app in Teams, but it's very limited. They liked the app, but they just wanted to have it in Teams and have some more functions. And so Dataverse for Teams was ideal for that, because if you have everybody in your company using it, you don't want to buy everybody a license. And so your options are, should we put that in SharePoint? SharePoint's not a good fit because there's security issues when you have data. Like some of those approvals might be secure, and if you share, like the last tip we had, which has been a while, we had it since we had new tips, but the last one was why you shouldn't use SharePoint. The idea is if you have 3,000 people in your company who can occasionally put in an approval request, and you have to buy them a license for Dataverse for Teams or for full Dataverse, then that's where Dataverse for Teams is a good fit. So even people that have Dynamics or have premium Power Apps, if it fits within the data limitations of 2 gigs or less, and you can use Flow to export the data someplace else, which is what we're doing in some places, then it's a good fit. And the fact that it can grow up with one click of a button, I can promote this to a full Dataverse environment. I think it's great. And I don't know what the stat is now, but within the last year, the vast majority of Power Apps being built were still on SharePoint, and including apps that were business important apps and that had financial or personal sensitive data in them, and so it's a much better fit there since we have the table permissions, because I can have real record ownership, I can have real user, or say you can read all the records, or you can just read your records, or you can create records owned by you. It's behind the scenes. The interesting thing, the table permissions are using the basic user role. So if you want to, it's using the same framework as full Dataverse security roles. And so that's why I think Dataverse for Teams is a really good kind of compromise, acknowledging that there is a place for simpler apps. But remember the no cliffs messaging? SharePoint has real cliffs because you hit a point where, from a data size or number of relationships, it becomes, in SharePoint, has a lot of delegation issues too, where you have, max you can get is 2,000 records if you use certain common filters. Where Dataverse for Teams, you can use system views, you can do all these things. It's more grown up, still relational database, but still part of the license. So that's where
hold on. Well,
yeah.
let me talk about this licensing, and I'm doing air quotes now, issue, right?
Okay.
Forget about whether you have 5 users or 3,000 users, right? Just forget for a second. Okay. The average user, what's the minimum wage in America right now?
I have no idea.
Give or take. Well, you would agree that
Amazon's trying to make $15.
Okay, $15. Let's use that as a benchmark. Okay, $15. So you're paying your users at least, even if you're paying the absolute minimum wage, right? At least something to the tune of $150 a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A full blown up license is going to set you back $2 per day. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying $40 divide by 20 working days. I'm being generous here. $2. So $2 versus $150. So it's 1%. 1%. And we're being extremely generous with the minimum wage and stuff like this, right? So less than 1%, significantly less than 1%. For the sake of this less than 1% of the money you're already paying your users, you can forget about this struggle, never-ending struggle. Are we going to exceed the license? Oh, how many applications do we use? Oh, is it 2 or is it 3? Is it counted? Or is it enforced? Or is it not enforced? Why on earth are we even doing that? If you cannot justify $2 a day for your users, you're just holding it wrong. Right?
Okay, so let's just say, and go with the list price of I guess $10 per month for the per
no, that's
app
per
license.
App. I'm being generous. I'm saying $40 for all of it.
Yeah, no, okay. So even better, $40. So you've got 3,000 users who put in approval requests 3 times a year. And
that's approval request. You're concentrating on a single task.
Well, I'm saying
across all the apps that you need, approval request will be one of dozens of the apps that you need, right? And you're trying to kind of resolve these by saying, let's minimize our licensing cost. I'm saying your licensing cost is less than, in reality, will be less than 0.1% of your overall cost. Why you even bother looking at that? And don't throw at me figures, 3,000 users times $40, because your payroll is 100 times larger than that, right?
Yeah, but even if you have licenses for those users, there's the capacity cost too, and that becomes a major cost. So what I'm saying is, it's about the use case for the app, and if you have something that a department wants to do, and a bunch of departments do. The reality is most enterprise companies have the environment creation locked down, and they have DLP rules set up and things like that. And so it's very hard for a department who wants to do something to, get a new environment, because it might be, we're tapped out on capacity, so we have to buy more storage, and that adds up over time. So what I'm saying is the things that are below a certain importance threshold, such as departmental type apps, you've got 2 gigs of free capacity per team. And so that gives you, say a team wants to model something out or try something, it just makes sense to do it in there, because at least you can put in a solution, test it out, and bring it into the full. So, not too uncommon scenario is you've got the central team managing your Dynamics and Power Platform environments. Okay. And they are, by necessity, have a cycle they go through, like a change cycle, or it takes them, they have monthly releases, let's say. But the vice president, he or she wants to be able to respond to market conditions and try a new program out, or try a new some kind of new thing. But it's a monthly cycle, but that cycle is usually planned a month or two in advance. So in reality, it could be a 3-4 month cycle. And so Dataverse for Teams could be something that could let them, with minimal impact to other environments, or capacity cost, try some, throw the spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks, if you will. And if it does,
It will. Spaghetti always sticks.
right. But if it does, then your core team can take that solution and grow it up into full Dataverse. And that's where
it's not. So what you're saying in enterprise environments, which I admit very little about, or not enough, let's put it this way. In enterprise environments, it's not so much down to the cost. It is a factor, but it's not a major factor. And in reality, it's getting it on the cost radar, so to speak, getting on the bureaucracy obstacles threshold, so you can try it out, roll something out locally without kind of triggering approval processes within the enterprise that could be just because of the bureaucracy, could be time consuming and exhausting. And in the end, you might get what you want, but it will eat like 6 months of your life, and you don't want that. You just want something quick.
But I also see it with smaller companies, and that's one of the differences. The average project size for a quote unquote Power Platform project is smaller than a Dynamics project, especially like a field service or some bigger application. So a lot of people have Power Platform. They have an E3 and E5 license, and then they want to try the platform out. And in that case, it can be a big road bump to say, oh, well, wait, you've got to pay $40 per user before you can use this, because this needs to be on a relational database. So then the motivation is, let's build it on SharePoint. So I think the big value here is two sides of things: expanding it to the team's momentum, and also for getting people started in a more scalable way. So like if you want to get started and you want to stick your toe in the pool and build some apps, number one, it builds additional Teams adoption for Microsoft. And a lot of companies are using Teams, so there's a value in having the apps where people are anyway. But the second thing is, it lets people start using and growing the platform without having to have that big license cost, and do it in a way that the apps they build can grow up to full Dataverse. So they don't have to, a lot of people build on SharePoint, then hit the limitations, then have to basically rebuild their apps, or restructure them in a major way. So that's where, again, I see the bigger win is people starting new without removing the barrier of having to pay a big license fee to just try the platform out and build your first couple apps. But also PVA has increased significantly since they put in Dataverse for Teams. Because the PVA has always,
because they put it in Windows.
No, because they put in Teams. It's in Dataverse for Teams also includes PVA for internal use. So people were looking at, like, I want to build a chat bot, but I have to spend $1,000 a month, even if I have 3 users, putting in a help desk request once a month. And that's been a equally big, in my opinion, and has led to a lot more PVA work.
So what's the licensing for PVA in Teams?
It's included. So you can build
Okay.
internal, and it's pretty full functions. It's pretty much the full thing. So if you want an internal, and this is a common scenario, I want to have a chat bot where people can, send requests for the help desk, but the average person might put 2 in a year. And do I really want to spend $1,000 for something? So it lets them use that, experience it, but then if they want to use it for their customers, then they license PVA.
Got it. So let me put it this way. So it doesn't sound like it's a tricycle to learn. It's a thing in its own right. So I would classify Dataverse for Teams as a moped. But you have to get it serviced by Microsoft, or you can only buy fuel from Microsoft.
I like the moped analogy because it's kind of like a combination, especially like if you look at the table editor, it looks and feels like Microsoft lists. And so I think that's a good thing because it's a much more it's not as scary. Like if you go for someone who's new to go to the data part of the make.power apps and have to understand, okay, I'm going to create tables and relationships. It's much more easy to see this grid and click the plus sign and choose, I want this type of field. And then behind the scenes be building relationships and look up fields and choices and things like that.
Interesting that you mentioned that the things that scare kind of non-developers or business users. Until I started doing Citizen Can recordings on YouTube, me and Amy Holden, we started recording the series. And one thing I discovered that I totally, being in my own kind of pro bubble, I totally ignored, and I found that I don't understand what scares a business user. Things that I thought are going to be scary for them, totally like they are oblivious and say, yeah, okay, whatever, right? And things that I take for granted, like even perhaps like a simple, statement from code. Suddenly, it's a roadblock because it's a different paradigm for them.
Yeah,
Right.
and
That
I think that some of that comes from people who write code, the code snobs, saying, "Oh, you can't do that," or you need the people who understand that to do it, and that creates barriers or artificial barriers to do it. Because I would hold up the fairly complex. Okay, so go download. Go download the Dataverse for Teams template apps, aka .ms/Teams milestones or Teams bulletins or Teams inspections, and open them up in the Maker Studio. Look at the styling formulas in there. Those are just as complex as writing code. And so, but it's presented in a way that I think is not as intimidating as, say, writing C#.
But didn't you say that some of your developers, when creating Canvas apps, they write formulas or expressions that would scare any pro developer away?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so it's I guess it's a balance. So for me personally, the most difficult part about switching and adopting Power Effects is changing the way you treat your tasks, whatever your objectives, what you need to accomplish. It's moving from procedural kind of event-driven paradigm to expression-driven, to dependencies-driven paradigm. Like when you do in Excel, you have dependencies and you easily understand them because you're saying, oh, okay, this is the cell that has my total subtotal for invoice. I need to add 10% tax to that. So I just multiply that value by 10 percent. That gives me a tax, and then I need to add these two together and get the total value of the invoice. So you kind of working backwards, whilst the programmer works in procedural, thinking, okay, when this value changes, I need to recalculate tax, and then I need to recalculate total. Instead of saying, oh, my total is a sum of tax plus subtotal. It's thinking the opposite way, thinking about dependencies rather than what should happen when something happens.
So
when something happens, it's not your concern.
Let's ask the question then. So as PowerFX advances and you have the ability in a model-driven form, or even better, at the field level inside a Dataverse to use PowerFX, will you, as more of a pro developer, use JavaScript, or will you use PowerFX?
I'd say I would use both, and my primary concern is actually how I'm going to balance both of those, because let me give you a couple examples where I would use PowerFX versus where I would use JavaScript. Let's say I need to recalculate in real time an exchange rate for some value, right? So I need to display, I don't want to use multi-currency feature. I just want to pick up any currency and see what currency value is, something like that. So my JavaScript would need to go out, call a service, come back, display the value. That's definitely JavaScript. I don't see it doing in PowerFX, not in short term, because PowerFX would need to have capabilities of invoking web service. Yes, you can say, George, you can write connector. If I have connector handy, maybe I need to see it before I need to try it out before it can happen. Potentially, yes, but off the top of my head, JavaScript feels more natural because it's procedural. I enter the value. I need to get out there, right? Get the value back, do some calculations, then display the result. Versus, let's say you have a task of someone with credit check. Did they pass credit check? Yes, no, it's a checkbox, right? And then you have credit limit field. You really want just disable credit limit when box is checked. It's a clear dependency. Is credit limit field enabled? It's a yes, no answer, and you just tie it back to whether box is checked. It's a one-line expression. Tiny expression, definitely PowerFX. I see more PowerFX replacing and superseding by far current business rules.
Yeah, and calculating rollup fields too.
Away, basically.
Calculating rollup fields as well, because calculated fields, were good, but one of those things that there was a promise we're going to do more. And you can't compare things to current date, for example, which is one of the major things where calculated fields fall apart. But then basically any field will be calculated field. If you think about it, you won't have to have a specific field type called calculated. You'll have a formula you could have on any field that could automatically set the and using variables and other things. I think will be good. To me, the biggest win is just consistency. Because that's why you have people who are generally either flow people or powerhouse people, because you learn the syntax of the formulas in one and you have to relearn it from the other one. So having that and in model driven and at the field level, I see that as a win. I see having PowerFX at the field level a win, because too many Canvas app people are putting too much stuff client side that should really be server side. And so the only thing we have...
But you're implying that PowerFX has identical capabilities on the server as it does on the client. So any expression that you create equally applies on the server.
My assumption, if you're putting it... And again, I don't know if I haven't seen enough to tell me if there are limitations. But like if I'm doing certain advanced calculations or things like that, and I have, I'm putting that inside the app on the front end, then, it's very, very... slows you down, where if it's at the server side or at the field level, or if you have three apps that all share that same thing, instead of putting the calculation each one, being able to use that. That's what I see.
It's a huge assumption. It's a huge assumption.
Well, everything we're saying is a huge assumption.
Yeah, and that's basically leads me to the
We should
to
call
one
the
of the
podcast
topics.
"Huge Assumptions."
Yeah, leads me to one other thing that we did talk about briefly is that at what point in time you stop buying into this grand vision and start doing real things, like what you described to me, Power FX on the client and on the server equal in capabilities to JavaScript plus custom connectors completely replaces JavaScript or TypeScript. And I'm saying maybe I should even hold back any of the long-term plans I have for customers and just sit and wait it out. And I know from the past that cost me this wait for features to come through, cost me at least one customer.
Sure, and that's where again I live in the world of reality, though. I mean, the average project I do now is a Canvas app project, not a Dynamics project. So with that in mind, yeah, we live with the limitations, and if there's things like that, I mean, that's what we had to do for printing for a year or more, because there are legitimate reasons for that people want to print from Canvas apps, and there's been some kludgy ways to do it, but and now it's here. But again, I didn't promise printing to anybody, or if they said that, I said we're not going to be able to, or set the proper limitations, or get documents core pack, or generate a template in Flow and email it to you or something like that. So there's
My answer to my customers would have been stop killing the trees.
okay, but let me give you a scenario. So you have an app you're building for a manufacturing company for their manufacturing process, and they need a printed bill of materials to send with what they're manufacturing. You have to print, right? Because you get
it all. No, I think why do you need? You have to ask why do you need to send bill of materials with your package? You should be sending a barcode or that can be scanned and bill of material comes up on your mobile or on your scanner if you scan it with the mobile phone.
I can make arguments why you shouldn't be printing.
Why you use checks in America? You do realize that the rest of the world no longer uses checks.
There are checks in Australia. You said this to me. I looked up. There are checks in Australia.
No. There are no check. Look, there is a notion of that. No one will accept payment by check. I dare you to walk into a supermarket and try to pay anything by check.
I don't pay by check in supermarket here.
Oh, I know people who do in America. Seriously, it's. Let's put it this way. I think I mentioned this before. I've got checkbook. When I set up my company, it was 1999, right? Jesus, 22 years ago. I have a checkbook. I used one check of that book. I wrote it for $1 to myself to verify that it's working fine. I could believe that it's a great technology. You write the money on the piece of paper and it just magically appears in your bank account. Never used it since.
I don't generally write checks either, George. So
generally is the key word. Generally, right? I don't write checks, full stop. I don't know anyone in Australia who writes checks. But anyway, we digress in what I'm saying. Printed bill of materials, it's an outdated concept that should be killed on the ground. You should stop doing that. You should find a way to communicate what's included in the package by other means.
Right.
And it could be Canvas app.
I'm smiling because I'm smiling because I can think of several features that we didn't have that I got very good at selling why you didn't need them, and then once we had them, it was the greatest idea ever. Business card scanning. You shouldn't be using business cards. Hey, wait, we got business card scanning now. Isn't this wonderful?
Yeah. Oh well.
Sometimes you just have to realize that again, the world you live in doesn't represent everybody, and there are legitimate use cases for printing. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, yes,
here's your point about the barcode is good, but they had to have something print the barcode out. So if you are manufacturing something and you have a barcode that goes on what you're manufacturing or in the box for it to be scanned when it gets to the next station, you have to have something print that barcode. Unless you're going to, stick an iPad in every box?
No, you just hire people on, as you like in America, on minimal wage, and you ask them to draw barcodes by hand. It works out that way. But anyway, I call it, like, for myself, paralysis by vision. The vision is so grand, so all-encompassing that I'm paralyzed right now. I can't decide what should be done now, what should wait. And as I said, I lost customer. Funny enough, I bought into the whole notion of that Power BI is going to replace SSRS. And it didn't in time, let's put it this way. It still doesn't replace it. So you still need kind of context-sensitive, just-in-time reporting. And Power BI just doesn't do that. It's not suited. And funny enough, Canvas would solve a lot of those. A lot of this just-in-time reporting can be solved with Canvas. Consuming and kind of displaying it in a nice way. Doesn't quite solve as a reporting problem, but it solves a lot of output, just-in-time output problems.
And you know what a lot of people are doing with those SSRS boards? They're printing them.
I know. We did for other customers. So we ended up as a service reports. We just create. It's not a custom connector. It's basically a custom code that reads the data and just basically uses IDL definition to spit out SSRS report. So it's effectively SSRS report without SSRS server. So we kind of replicate it. But hey, look, some people still use that. And Power BI, I'm more than convinced it's not a replacement for those occasions. And perhaps printing, or rather fidelity in the output, because that's what was holding printing back, right? Fidelity in the output, that's what the key is, right? So you can produce output that accurately reflects your business data. And once you achieve that, then you can print it, you can display on the screen, whatever. And a lot of people will print it, but that's besides the point. You will get just-in-time output in the way you want to see it. And that's kind of Canvas apps. Yeah, that's Canvas app domain, absolutely. And for a couple customers, we do go down that path, and we say, hey, look, you want to see your data just in time the way you want it, you go Canvas. You need organized kind of database driven stuff, you go model driven apps.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Anyway, I think we should resurrect our reviews of our hardware and software. Remember years ago when we started, we did the reviews, and it would be interesting to see what survived and what's not. So with this software, I've got the tip for you. I think I tip it everywhere, so lots of people may have seen it or heard it. If you go to any text editor, and I think even Notepad. Let me go to Notepad. Will it do in Notepad? Yes, it does in Notepad as well. And press Windows key dot.
Okay.
Did something happen when you press Windows key dot?
My keyboard doesn't have a Windows key. What should happen if I hit Windows key dot?
When you hit Windows key dot, basically you pop up emoji. It pops up emoji selector. Not only emoji selector.
Oh yeah, the emoji keyboard. Yeah.
Emoji keyboard. No, it's not. It's more than keyboard. It pops up. It's emojis. Second tab is, I don't remember how they called. It's a combination of characters, the guy, surprised guy, and flipping the table, combination of characters and things like that. And the third one is one of the most useful, like when you need to type euro, for example. What do you do now? right? It's got like a pound and euro and all this bizarre symbols that you need from time to time.
Right.
All the Unicode stuff.
Yeah, it's also, I think Windows key semicolon does it too.
Okay, but you don't have semicolon. Let me see. Yeah, it does too.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I was familiar with it. So yeah, the emoji key the emoji keyboard is
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So
So that's a lifesaver for me.
what's your most used emoji?
Uh, uh, Not here. This one doesn't show mostly used. Oh, it does. It does. So I've got lols followed by ROFL, followed by eye rolling, obviously. What's yours?
I am not a big emoji user. I'm pretty boring with just the smiley face and stuff like that. I also have, for some reason, a chair is one of my most frequently used ones.
A chair.
Yeah, that and a police officer.
Chair in the police office.
I don't know what that says. So, do you use emojis in communication with your customers?
Uh, Only, you mean in emails?
Yeah.
In emails, rarely, only smiley faces, maybe laughing emoji, maybe sad, maybe neutral emoji, literally like 3 or 4 different ones. I reserve spectrum of emojis when I do communicate in Teams or in Slack. So in more kind of social media, I tend to use emojis more. In traditional email documents, obviously, rarely, only in comments. And then I restrict myself to a handful, same way as you do. But in Teams and Slack, like on social kind of more social accounts, definitely.
Yeah. Teams just added a bunch more too. I saw.
I wish they would stop using in Teams old Skype stuff.
Yeah.
They use old Skype shortcuts and emojis. It's a limited set. Just switch to a standard set as everyone else does. So Teams is a bit confusing when it comes to emoji use. But I think we digress, and I think we run out of things to say to each other.
But I think I just saw the other day they have a lot more. They've added more. So if you haven't looked at the emojis in Teams, there's now quite a few more, including some cats.
Let me see. Oh, the only thing I like in Teams is the way they use GIFs built in.
Yeah,
That's I like it.
Yeah. All right.
And
Well, George, good to catch up with you.
absolutely. Hopefully, we can do it on a more regular basis than every 6 months.
But that'll give people something to look forward to, like an event. Our every 6 month podcast.